6 months ago, I was the operations director of Strive Edge Logistics, managing 80 employees and driving $8 million in annual revenue. Today, that company doesn't exist, and I'm the reason why. It all started with a handshake, a smug grin, and 5 cruel words. We're bringing in my nephew. He thought I'd walk away quietly. But I don't do quiet. My name is Rachel Monroe. And at 36, I'd built my career from nothing. No trust fund, no family connections, no Ivy League pedigree, just me, my laptop, and a relentless drive to prove that talent beats nepotism every damn time. St. Helena, California, isn't exactly Silicon Valley, but our little wine country town had its own ecosystem of thriving businesses. Strive Edge Logistics sat in a converted warehouse on the edge of town, its glass-fronted offices overlooking rows of delivery trucks that I'd helped multiply from 12 to 47. When I started here as a junior coordinator 4 years ago, we were pulling in $1.5 million annually. Last quarter, we closed at $8.2 million. I lived for the chaos of modern logistics, the 3 a.m. crisis calls about delayed shipments, the intricate dance of routing algorithms, the satisfaction of watching real-time dashboards turn from red to green. My team of 80 wasn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, they were people I'd hired, trained, and fought for during budget meetings. Maria, our dispatch supervisor, who'd started the same week as me, James, our fleet manager, who'd revolutionized our maintenance schedules, Sarah, our customer success lead, who could charm the anger out of any client. The office culture at Strive Edge was pure American corporate theater. Work until you drop or get dropped. Open floor plans where everyone could see who left first. Slack messages at 11 p.m. that weren't really optional. The unspoken rule that your worth was measured in hours, logged and revenue generated. I didn't create this culture, but I'd mastered it. My morning coffee was always the first one brewed at 5:45 a.m. My car was usually the last one in the parking lot. Harold Kent, our CEO, loved to parade me around during investor meetings. Rachel here took our operational efficiency from 72% to 94% in 18 months. He'd say, his hand hovering near my shoulder but never quite touching. He'd learned that lesson after I'd stared him down during my first week. She's the reason we can promise same-day delivery in 3 counties. What he never mentioned was how I'd rebuilt our routing software from scratch because he'd been too cheap to buy proper logistics software. Or how I'd personally driven routes during the labor shortage of 2021. Or how I'd talked our biggest client out of leaving when Harold's golf buddy had screwed up their holiday shipments. I wasn't naive. I knew how corporate America worked. But I'd also believed that results mattered more than relationships. That building something from $1, $5 million to $8 million meant job security. That being indispensable meant being safe. In my downtown apartment, 20 minutes from the office, I had a vision board. Yes, I know how that sounds. But visualization works. On it. VP of Operations by 38. Own logistics firm by 45. $500K saved by 40. Each goal had a detailed plan beneath it, color-coded and bullet-pointed. I was ahead of schedule on everything. The morning everything changed started like any other. 5:15 a.m. alarm, workout, shower, black blazer over dark jeans, the St. Helena version of power dressing, green juice in my travel mug because coffee could wait until I'd checked the overnight reports. But when I pulled into the parking lot at 5:43 a.m., Harold's Tesla was already there. In 4 years, I'd never seen him before 8:30. I should have known then, should have seen the signs. The way he'd been avoiding eye contact during last week's leadership meeting, the new names CC'd on emails about strategic planning, the whispers that stopped when I walked by. But I was Rachel Monroe. I'd built this operation with my bare hands. I was untouchable. God, I was such a fool. The summons came at 7:47 a.m. through Harold's assistant. Mr. Kent would like to see you in his office. Now. I saved the routing optimization report I'd been reviewing and walked the 50 feet to his corner office, my heels clicking against the polished concrete floor. Each step felt heavier than the last, like my body knew something my brain refused to accept. Harold sat behind his mahogany desk, a $15,000 monstrosity he'd bought after our first profitable quarter. He didn't look up when I entered, just kept scrolling through his phone with the casual indifference of someone about to ruin a life. "Sit," he said, still not making eye contact. I remained standing. "What's this about, Harold?" Finally, he looked up, and I saw it. That particular blend of corporate cowardice and false sympathy that preceded every brutal decision. "Rachel, you know how much we value your contributions here." My stomach dropped. Nobody starts with your value unless they're about to prove how little you're actually worth. "We're restructuring," he continued, folding his hands like he was delivering a sermon. "The board feels we need fresh perspectives in leadership. New blood? You understand?" "I understand that I've quadrupled your revenue." My voice stayed steady. Professional. Don't show weakness. Never show weakness. "I understand that I've cut operational costs by 30% while expanding coverage. What exactly needs fresh perspective about success?" Harold's jaw tightened. He hated when women talked back, had once told me after 3 whiskeys at the company Christmas party that I'd go further if I softened my edges. "The decision's been made. We're bringing in my nephew. We're bringing in Chase Kent, recent MBA from Wharton. He's got some innovative ideas about disrupting the logistics space." My nephew. The words hung in the air like a confession. Your nephew. I let the words sit there, heavy and accusatory. The one who spent last summer crashing his BMW in the Hamptons? That innovative thinker? Harold's face flushed red. "Chase has matured significantly. And frankly, your attitude right now is proving the board's point about needing change." "What's my severance?" The question caught him off guard. He'd expected begging, maybe tears. "You're not being terminated. We're transitioning you to a special advisor role. Same salary. Flexible hours. You can work from home. Focus on strategic initiatives." Translation. We're parking you in a corner until you quit voluntarily, saving us unemployment and avoiding a wrongful termination suit. "I want to hear you say it," I said, leaning forward, my palms flat on his ridiculous desk. "Tell me you're replacing me with your 27-year-old nephew who's never worked a day in logistics." The announcement goes out Monday. Chase starts immediately as operations director. "You'll help with the transition, of course." "Of course." I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. "Harold, remember this moment. Remember it when everything you built comes crashing down." He laughed. Actually laughed. "Is that a threat, Rachel?" "No, it's a spoiler." The next week was corporate humiliation at its finest. Chase Kent arrived on Monday in a Tesla Model S and a Tom Ford suit, shaking hands like he was running for office. In meetings, he threw around buzzwords: synergy, blockchain integration, autonomous optimization, while I sat silently in the corner. The ghost of competence passed. By Wednesday, I couldn't access the routing software I'd built. By Thursday, my keycard only worked for the main entrance. On Friday, Harold's assistant sent an email. "Your services as special advisor are no longer required. Please return your company property by 5 p.m. No gratitude, no acknowledgement, just a security guard watching as I packed 4 years into a cardboard box. But the real betrayal came the following Monday. Sarah forwarded me an email Harold had sent to our major clients. Due to recent instability in our operations leadership, we're implementing new oversight measures. We discovered several concerning decisions made by former personnel that require correction. He was poisoning my reputation, ensuring I couldn't work anywhere in the industry. The message was clear: disappear quietly, or I'll destroy you completely. I sat in my apartment that night, staring at my vision board. VP of Operations by 38 mocked me in purple ink. The carefully constructed future I'd built was gone, torched by 5 words. We're bringing in my nephew. They wanted me to disappear? Fine. But I'd take the whole damn company with me. The first week after my termination, I didn't leave my apartment. I sat on my couch in the same UCLA sweatshirt for 3 days straight, cycling between rage and despair, surviving on wine and whatever DoorDash would bring to my building. My carefully maintained routine, the 5:15 alarms, the morning workouts, the color-coded schedules, crumbled into nothing. My phone became an instrument of torture. LinkedIn notifications about Chase Kent's exciting new role at Strive Edge. Text messages from former colleagues that started with, "I heard what happened," and ended with, "But I can't really talk. You understand." The industry WhatsApp groups went silent when I posted about looking for new opportunities. By week 2, I forced myself to shower, put on my interview suit, and start making calls. I had 4 years of proven success, glowing performance reviews, and quantifiable achievements. How hard could it be? "Rachel, so good to hear from you," said Tom Valdez, CEO of Coastal Logistics, a competitor I'd beaten for contracts dozens of times. "I heard you left Strive Edge. Harold mentioned you were dealing with some personal challenges." Personal challenges. The lie spread faster than wine stains on white carpet. "I'm exploring new opportunities." I kept my voice steady, professional. "I'd love to discuss how I could help Coastal reach the next level." "I'm sure you would, but we're not hiring right now. Best of luck, though." Click. The pattern repeated across every company in Northern California's logistics sector. Doors that should have opened slammed shut. Recruiters who'd pestered me for years suddenly couldn't return calls. One hiring manager accidentally forwarded me Harold's reference email. Ms. Monroe became increasingly unstable in her final months. Brilliant mind, but significant personality disorders. I'd strongly advise against hiring her for any position of responsibility. Personality disorders. The man who'd grabbed his assistant's ass at the holiday party was diagnosing me with personality disorders. By week 3, the savings account I'd carefully built started its descent. $2,800 for rent, $450 for the car payment on the Audi I'd bought to celebrate hitting the $5 million revenue mark. Health insurance through Cobra, $100. The math of middle-class destruction played out in automated withdrawals. I expanded my search beyond logistics. Maybe tech? Retail operations? Hell, I'd manage a McDonald's if it meant income. But Harold's poison had spread beyond our industry. Word travels fast in Silicon Valley's extended network. Rachel Monroe, brilliant, but crazy, unstable, difficult to work with. You know how women get when they can't handle pressure. One night, after another day of rejected applications and unreturned calls, I found myself on Strive Edge's website. Chase Kent's smiling face dominated the leadership page. Bringing innovative disruption to traditional logistics models. Below, a press release about their record quarter, built on contracts I'd negotiated, systems I'd implemented, relationships I'd cultivated. I threw my wine glass at the wall. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, Cabernet bleeding down white paint like all my carefully constructed dreams. That's when the crying started, not pretty tears, but ugly, body-shaking sobs that left me gasping on my bathroom floor. 4 years, 4 fucking years of 60-hour weeks, of missing friends' weddings, of checking routing reports during Christmas dinner. For what? So some nepotism poster child could play CEO while I got branded as crazy? But somewhere between the 3rd bottle of wine and the 4th day of wearing the same pajamas, something shifted. The tears dried up. The self-pity crystallized into something harder, sharper. Rage has a clarity that sadness lacks. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the hollow-eyed woman staring back. Harold Kent had taken my job, my reputation, my future. He'd painted me as unstable, crazy, difficult, fine. But crazy people don't methodically destroy companies. They don't carefully document every irregular payment, every safety violation, every creative interpretation of federal regulations. They don't spend 4 years learning every weakness in a system they helped build. I wasn't crazy. I was something far more dangerous. I was competent. and I was angry. I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Project Nemesis. Inside, I began typing everything I remembered about Strive Edge's operations. Not the sanitized version Harold presented to investors, but the real story. The one written in violated regulations and cooked books. If Harold thought he could erase me, make me disappear into wine-soaked obscurity, he'd miscalculated. I wasn't going to fade away. I wasn't going to move on. I wasn't going to let it go. I was going to end him, and his company, and his nephew's shiny new career. Not because I was unstable, but because some things deserve to be destroyed. And sometimes, the best person to light the match is the one who knows exactly where you keep the gasoline. Revenge, like logistics, requires meticulous planning. I spent the next 2 weeks transforming my apartment into a war room. My dining table disappeared under stacks of printed emails, contracts, and shipping manifests I'd forwarded to my personal account over the years. An insurance policy I'd never thought I'd need to cash. The first thread came from memory. During my second year, Harold had asked me to optimize our waste management routes. What he really meant, dump industrial cleaning chemicals from our warehouse into regular trash routes, saving $200K annually in hazardous waste disposal fees. I'd pushed back initially, but Harold made it clear, play ball or find another job. So I played ball and documented everything. I still had the emails. Rachel, per our discussion, please implement the alternate disposal protocol, no paper trail needed. Except I'd created one anyway. Forwarded emails, photographed manifests, GPS data showing our trucks at municipal dumps when they should have been at certified facilities. But illegal dumping was just the appetizer. The main course lived in a shell company Harold had established in Nevada, Desert Line Holdings LLC. On paper, it provided consulting services to Strive Edge. In reality, it was a tax funnel, billing us for non-existent services while Harold pocketed the difference. I'd discovered it while trying to trim our operational costs, and Harold had sworn me to secrecy with a $50K bonus and an implicit threat. I mapped the money flow on my wall with red string like some conspiracy theorist. $1.2 million annually flowing from Strive Edge to Desert Line to Harold's personal accounts in the Caymans. Classic embezzlement dressed up in corporate drag. The federal violations were the dessert. We'd been filing false delivery confirmations for government contracts, marking packages delivered when they were still in our warehouse, helping us hit performance metrics while putting military supplies and medical shipments at risk. I had screenshots of the actual delivery times versus what we reported. Each false filing was a federal offense carrying up to 5 years in prison. But evidence without a delivery mechanism is just paper. I needed allies. First call, Michelle Garrett, the investigative journalist who'd exposed corruption at Bay Area Tech Transit. We'd met at a conference where she'd grilled me about Strive Edge's rapid growth. I'd deflected then. Now, I had a different story to tell. Rachel Monroe, she answered on the second ring. I heard Harold Kent finally pushed you out. Stupid move on his part. How would you like to write the story that ends him? We met at a Starbucks in Palo Alto, far from St. Helena's gossipy eyes. I slid her a flash drive across the table. Everything's there. Illegal dumping, tax evasion, federal contract fraud. 4 years of evidence. She whistled low. This is career-ending stuff. For him and potentially you, whistleblower protections only go so far. I'm already ended, Michelle. Now I'm returning the favor. Next, Gary Walsh, the attorney who'd handled my apartment lease. Corporate law wasn't his specialty, but he knew someone, David Kim, a former federal prosecutor who'd transitioned to private practice exposing corporate fraud. This is a gold mine, David said, reviewing my documentation in his Burlingame office. With this evidence, the feds will crawl so far up Strive Edge's ass they'll be able to check Harold's dental work. What's your fee? 30% of any whistleblower recovery. Government typically pays 15 to 30% of what they recover. With $8 million in annual revenue and these violations, you're looking at a nice payday. I wasn't doing it for the money, but getting paid to destroy Harold? Poetic justice had a price tag. The final piece required more finesse. I needed to turn Strive Edge's clients against them without violating my non-disclosure agreement. Fortunately, NDAs don't cover public information. I created an anonymous blog, Logistics Truth Watch. Using publicly available data and carefully worded speculation, I posted about concerning patterns in Bay Area logistics companies. I never named Strive Edge directly, but included enough details that their major clients would connect the dots. Is your logistics provider putting your business at risk? Check these 5 warning signs of federal investigation targets. Within days, my former colleagues reported panicked client calls. Were the rumors true? Should they be concerned? Was their supply chain compromised? I also reached out to Robert Chen and Amanda Walsh, CEOs of our 2 largest clients who'd always respected my work. Coffee meetings, carefully casual. I can't discuss specifics, I told Robert over lattes in Napa. But if I were you, I'd audit your logistics provider's compliance very carefully. Very, very carefully. He got the message. So did Amanda. Every general knows. Victory requires attacking from multiple angles. Harold had fired a single shot. I was preparing to return artillery fire from every direction. The chess pieces were in position. The evidence was packaged. The allies were aligned. Harold thought he'd erased me with a cardboard box and a security escort. But I'd spent 4 years learning every weakness in his armor, every shortcut, every lie, every crime. He taught me the most valuable lesson of my career. In corporate America, loyalty is a luxury only the powerful can afford. Time to show him what happens when you make an enemy of someone who knows all your secrets. The first domino fell on a Tuesday morning. Michelle's article dropped at 6 a.m. on Bay Area. Business Insider. Strive Edge Logistics under federal investigation for hazardous waste violations. The headline alone sent Strive Edge's stock tumbling 12% before markets opened. But the details were what turned concern into panic. She'd woven my evidence into a masterpiece of investigative journalism. Photographed documents showing toxic chemicals in municipal dumps. GPS data proving systematic illegal disposal. Internal emails discussing alternate protocols with Harold's digital signature all over them. The article concluded with a killer quote from an anonymous former executive. This wasn't a few bad decisions. This was systematic criminal behavior directed from the very top. My phone started buzzing at 6:07 a.m. Sarah, my former customer success lead. Holy shit, Rachel, did you see this? I was already dressed, sitting at my breakfast bar with coffee and my laptop, watching Strive Edge's internal communications implode in real time through a backdoor I'd kept in our Slack system. Harold's damage control attempts were pathetic. This is a hit piece from a disgruntled former employee. Everyone stay focused. Business as usual. But business was far from usual. By 8 a.m., the EPA had announced a formal investigation. By 10 a.m., 3 major clients had suspended their contracts pending review. By noon, Strive Edge scandal was trending on Twitter. Phase 2 launched that afternoon. David Kim filed the whistleblower complaint with the Department of Justice, simultaneously alerting the IRS about Desert Line Holdings. The beauty of federal investigations? Once they start, they metastasize. Every agency wants their pound of flesh. Wednesday brought the client exodus. Robert Tan, I'd misremembered his name in my notes, announced Trans-Pacific Imports was terminating their $2.8 million annual contract effective immediately. We cannot partner with companies under federal investigation, his statement read. The risk to our supply chain is unacceptable. Amanda Walsh followed within hours. Her company, MedSupply Direct, couldn't afford contamination scandals when shipping medical equipment. Another $1.6 million annual revenue evaporated. But Thursday was when the real fireworks started. The FBI raided Strive Edge at dawn. I watched from my car across the street, sipping a latte as agents carried out boxes of documents, hard drives, and Harold's precious mahogany desk contents. Local news crews materialized like vultures. broadcasting the perp walk of corporate destruction. Harold tried to flee out the back, but photographers were waiting. The image of him shielding his face, Tom Ford's suit wrinkled, became the story's defining visual. Chase Kent, the innovative nephew, was nowhere to be seen, probably halfway to his trust fund's safe harbor. Inside Strive Edge, according to my sources, chaos reigned. Employees were told not to touch their computers. Email servers were seized. The routing software I'd built, now evidence in a federal case, went dark, stranding hundreds of shipments. By Friday, the employee exodus began. James, my former fleet manager, texted me, putting in my notice, "This place is radioactive. Thanks for the warning signals." He meant my anonymous blog posts, which had given smart employees time to update their resumes. Maria, the dispatch supervisor, was blunter. Harold's in the conference room crying, actually crying, says someone betrayed him. The irony is delicious. The IRS moved slower, but struck deeper. Desert Line Holdings' phantom invoices unraveled like a cheap sweater. Forensic accountants found the Cayman accounts, the fake consulting fees, the whole beautiful fraud. Tax evasion charges carry serious federal time, especially when they exceed $1 million. But I saved the best for last. Friday afternoon. I sent my final email. Not from my personal account, I wasn't stupid. From a burner email, routed through 3 VPNs, sent to Harold's personal address. Harold, you were right about one thing. I was unstable. Unstable enough to document every crime you committed. Unstable enough to keep evidence of every shortcut, every lie, every federal violation. You thought you were replacing an employee. You were removing the only person who knew where all the bodies were buried and was still loyal enough to keep quiet. Your nephew has an MBA. I have 4 years of evidence. Guess which one the FBI values more? You should have fired your nephew, not me. R. I hit send and closed the laptop. Across town, an empire built on lies was crumbling. The local news reported that Strive Edge had suspended operations indefinitely. Federal agents had frozen their accounts. Criminal charges were pending. The company that had generated $8 million in revenue last year wouldn't survive the month. Some might call it vindictive, excessive, unstable. I called it justice. With interest. Harold Kent had taught me that corporate America rewards those who take what they want. Consequences be damned. He just never expected his star student to apply that lesson to him. By Monday, the offices would be empty, the trucks would be repossessed, the clients would be gone, and Harold Kent would be meeting with criminal defense attorneys instead of playing golf at his country club. As for me, I sat in my apartment, watching the news coverage, feeling something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. The collapse was swift and absolute, like watching a skyscraper implode in slow motion, each floor pancaking into the next until nothing remained but dust and debris. By the second Monday after the FBI raid, Strive Edge Logistics had ceased to exist as a functioning entity. The parking lot that once held 47 delivery trucks now gaped empty, the vehicles repossessed by creditors who'd lost faith faster than rats fleeing a sinking ship. The loading docks where I'd spent countless dawn hours optimizing routes were sealed with federal tape. The local news couldn't get enough of the story. $8 million logistics, giant crumbles under federal investigation. They ran B-roll footage of the empty offices on a loop, fluorescent lights still on, casting shadows over abandoned desks littered with family photos and dead plants. Nobody had even been allowed back to collect personal items. Harold Kent's fall from grace was spectacular. The man who'd once strutted through St. Helena's business community like he owned it was now facing a federal indictment with 17 counts: tax evasion, wire fraud, falsifying federal documents, illegal disposal of hazardous materials, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government. Each count carried years in federal prison. His lawyers, the expensive ones from San Francisco, dropped him when his assets were frozen. The IRS had done their homework on Desert Line Holdings. They'd traced 3 years of phantom invoices totaling $3.6 million. That money, instead of funding Harold's boat and his wine collection, would now be subject to treble damages, triple the amount owed plus penalties. His house in St. Helena, the one with the infinity pool overlooking the vineyards, went on the market within a week. Fire sale prices. Chase Kent, the MBA nephew who was supposed to bring innovative disruption to logistics, had lasted exactly 23 days as operations director. His LinkedIn profile quietly removed all mention of Strive Edge. The last anyone heard, he was back in Connecticut, probably spinning the experience as a startup adventure at country club brunches. His greatest innovation had been accelerating the company's destruction through sheer incompetence. Routes went unmanaged, clients unserved, and employees undirected during the chaos. The employee fallout was the part that almost made me feel guilty. Almost. 80 people lost their jobs when Strive Edge shuttered, but the smart ones, the ones who'd heeded the warning signs, had already jumped ship. Maria landed at FedEx with a significant pay raise. James was poached by Amazon. Sarah started her own customer success consulting firm, using Strive Edge's spectacular failure as a case study in what not to do. The rest, the ones who'd stayed loyal to Harold, who'd believed his protests of innocence, filed for unemployment, and learned hard lessons about placing faith in corrupt leadership. The whistleblower claim David Kim had filed on my behalf was working its way through federal bureaucracy. Early estimates suggested the government would recover between $15 to $20 million in fines, penalties, and back taxes. My cut, as the whistleblower who'd provided the evidence, would be 25%, enough to rebuild my life several times over. Enough to start my own logistics company, if I wanted. One built on actual innovation, not nepotism and fraud. But the money felt almost anticlimactic compared to the destruction itself. The building that had housed Strive Edge went dark 2 weeks after the raid. The landlord, facing 2 years of unpaid rent from Harold's frozen accounts, posted for lease signs within days. I drove by one evening, parking across the street where I'd watched the FBI raid. The Strive Edge logo had already been removed, leaving a ghostly outline on the concrete facade. $8 million in annual revenue, reduced to a shadow on a wall. Inside sources, former colleagues who still texted me, painted a picture of Harold's final days. He'd gone from denial to rage to desperate bargaining, calling former business partners, begging for character references, for loans, for anyone to believe his version of events. But when you build your empire on lies, you discover quickly how few true allies you have. His wife filed for divorce the day his assets were frozen. Turns out she hadn't known about the Cayman accounts, and the IRS was very interested in her signature on joint tax returns. The wine collection he'd spent years curating was auctioned to pay legal bills. The country club quietly revoked his membership. The last confirmed sighting of Harold Kent was at a Motel 6 near Sacramento, meeting with a public defender because no private attorney would take his case without upfront payment. The man who'd once told me I needed to soften my edges was learning what hard edges felt like when they were pressed against your throat. As for Strive Edge Logistics, it became a cautionary tale in business schools, a perfect example of how one whistleblower with the right evidence could topple a seemingly successful company. Professors would analyze the case for years. How could an $8 million company collapse in 2 weeks? How could one person orchestrate such complete destruction? They'd miss the simple answer. Hell hath no fury like a competent woman scorned. The empire Harold Kent built on my back had crumbled to dust. The nephew he'd chosen over me was a punchline. The reputation he'd tried to destroy had been vindicated in federal court. I'd warned him this would happen, told him it was a spoiler, not a threat. He should have listened. 6 months later, I drove through St. Helena one last time. The morning fog rolled through the vineyards, same as it had every day I'd made the commute to Strive Edge. But this time, I wasn't rushing to beat Harold to the office. I wasn't checking routing reports at red lights. I was just driving. The building sat empty, a monument to corporate hubris. The for lease signs had faded in the California sun, and weeds pushed through cracks in the parking lot where delivery trucks once idled. I pulled into the same spot where I'd parked for 4 years, cut the engine, and sat in silence. No victory dance, no champagne celebration. Just the quiet satisfaction of survival. The whistleblower payment had cleared the previous month, $4.2 million after taxes. Enough to never worry about rent again. Enough to never beg for a job from men who'd whisper about my instability. Enough to build something new, something mine, something that no mediocre nephew could steal. But I hadn't touched it yet. The money sat in my account like a question mark, waiting for me to decide who Rachel Monroe would become next. I stepped out of the car and walked to the building's entrance. Through the dusty glass, I could see the empty reception desk where security had watched me pack my life into a cardboard box. The elevator that had carried me up to Harold's office for that final humiliation. The ghosts of ambition and betrayal haunting every square foot. My phone buzzed. A text from Maria. Saw the news. Harold got 7 years federal time. Thought you'd want to know. 7 years. He'd be almost 70 when he got out. His reputation destroyed, his fortune consumed by restitution and legal fees. His nephew Chase had reportedly fled to Europe, living off whatever trust fund money the feds couldn't touch. The Kent family name, once synonymous with St. Helena business royalty, was now shorthand for corporate corruption. I could have felt sorry for them. Could have wondered if the destruction I'd orchestrated was proportionate to the crime. Could have second-guessed whether annihilating an entire company was the right response to personal betrayal. But then I remembered the smirk on Harold's face when he said those 5 words. We're bringing in my nephew. The casual cruelty of erasing 4 years of my life. The lies he spread to ensure I'd never work again. The assumption that I'd disappear quietly. Another woman crushed by the machinery of corporate America. He'd been right about one thing. I had been unstable. Unstable enough to document everything. Unstable enough to plan methodically. Unstable enough to execute perfectly. But instability and incompetence are different things. He'd confused the two, and it had cost him everything. I took one last look at the building, then walked back to my car. There was nothing here for me anymore. No ghosts to confront, no victories to savor. Just an empty building with a shadow on the wall where a logo used to be. As I drove away, heading north toward new possibilities, one thought echoed in my mind. When you build your empire on someone else's back, don't be surprised when they pull the foundation out from under you. Harold Kent had taught me that loyalty in corporate America flows only upward. That competence means nothing compared to connections. That being good at your job is less important than being someone's nephew. Fine lessons, all of them. I'd learned them well. Well enough to use them against him. Well enough to prove that sometimes. The best revenge isn't living well. It's making sure the person who wronged you doesn't get to live well either. I didn't just take down a company. I took down the man who thought I was disposable, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment below and let me know what country or city you're in. I love connecting with listeners from around the world. If you enjoyed this story of corporate revenge, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. Have you ever dealt with workplace betrayal? How did you handle it? Let's discuss in the comments below.